All right. So Gabriel talked about being enough and trying to figure out what it takes, what's your why besides the UC in jail, put on your uniform every day and come to work. All right. But our next story today will be coming from my man Jay talking about being enough.
Hey everyone, I'm Jay. 21 years old, been in the Air Force a little over 2 years now. I work with Power Pro. Yeah, so I guess I'm gonna kind of start at the beginning as well. I grew up kind of bouncing around between different family members. I living with my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my aunt, uh, different stepfather, stepmother, like I was just all over the place. And I had to learn to adapt pretty early on because I was just lived in inconsistency. Uh, Never really knew where I was going to be going or where I was going to be living. It's hard to kind of make friends whenever I was like, I'm probably going to be gone in 6 months or a year. So, yeah, I think in an effort to try to like fit in, I started drinking at the age of like 12. And at that age, like 12 to like 16, 17, is very like gray for me. Like I don't really know the exact age I was for a lot of things, but I know that pretty early on is when I had my first drink. That definitely impacted me in a way where I didn't figure this out till I was 17 or 18, but I have pretty severe ADHD and I'm never focused on anything. I was always worried. I always had like this anxiety. I was always trying to fit in. I was always trying to just be something I wasn't a lot of the time. And at 12, I had my first drink, and I just remember not having any of those thoughts anymore, not being worried, not being anxious. And I was just like, it wasn't even a positive feeling. It was just a numbness feeling. And I latched onto that pretty early on. But at 16 years old, I found out that I could start taking college classes. I tested for it. So I tested just high enough that I could take like all college courses. So started taking college at 16. In order for me to do that, I had to move in with another relative who was in a specific county because there was like weird rules and stuff. And, so I moved in with my aunt, slept on her floor, started going to college full time. But the issue was, hey, you need a truck, you need gas, you need insurance, you need all these things. So I had to get a job too. I wasn't afraid of work. I definitely grew up working with relatives, specifically my dad. He's a contractor, kind of. But I grew up doing odd jobs, like learned how to do roofing at like 12, learned how to do like siding at like, a certain age. I was doing a lot of flooring. My knees are shot because I did so much flooring when I was growing up without knee pads. And yeah, I remember I needed to get like a regular job. And I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. Got a job at Panera Bread and working fast food and doing full-time college. And I was like, this isn't enough. I feel like I got to do more. So I got a second job. So I was doing 2 part-time jobs, 2 different restaurants, and I was taking 6 college courses. I needed to maintain the 6 college courses to also fulfill my high school stuff. And I was like, all right, if I knock out this school, if I do good at this job, and if I do good at this job, if I get promoted, if I do these things, and I succeed at school, and like eventually there's this goalpost in my head where like if I reach this goalpost, if I graduate, if I get my degree before I'm 18, if I do this thing, then it'll be enough. Like I had this just false assumption, and I was trying to prove something to everyone who I lived with, and to my father, to myself, really. And I thought that if I did all of these things, that I would do that. At around 16, I also found out about the military. One of my mom's boyfriends told me about it, and he was like prior Army. And the idea, because I've got this ADHD brain, I was like, I need like structure. I was like, I'm all over the place. I want to do all these different things, and I don't know. The idea of things not being the same day to day like makes me go crazy. And he started talking about the military. It's like, yeah, there's a structure. You show up day in, you just do your job, and like everyone's forced to be organized. Everyone's forced to be structural. So I thought, like, joining the military, everything was just going to be textbook and just very straightforward. And so I kind of thought, that sounds good. Maybe once I turn 18, I'll do that. And then I heard about special warfare. So this head of mine where I'm like, all right, I need to be the best. I need to do the best. Then I'll prove myself. Then I'll be enough. I heard about special warfare. And first it was with Marines. I started talking to a Marine recruiter at like 17, looking at MARSOC eventually. And then I actually stepped in with the Navy and got a BUDS contract. And I was like, all right, this is going to be it. I have 1 year left of college, working 2 jobs, and then I'm training for this BUDS thing. And I was like, yeah, once I do all these things, all the things will fall in a row, and then it'll be perfect. And I met my wife. And that was when I was like, I started to realize that all these things I'm placing my value and my worth in, and things that I can do, and things that I can prove, like none of that mattered when I had someone that like I loved and that loved me like unconditionally. At the time, I didn't know that fully because we'd only been dating like 6 months, and but yeah, I started to kind of feel like a little off because my reasoning for doing all these things was based on me centered, or like my father, like, proving him wrong, all these things. I was about to ship out for the Navy, and like I want to say June, and I failed a class because I started to get burnt out. I was doing school, I was doing all this work, I was doing all these things. It was just too much, and it was hard. I couldn't realize. Everyone was telling me like, "Dude, you're doing a great job. Like, just lay it off. Like, maybe like cut out one of the jobs. Like, do whatever." One job was enough for me to pay everything I needed to, but I was like, "No, it's not enough. I need to do more." And yeah, this time I was still drinking pretty regularly, and it was more like a coping mechanism at this point. At first, it was social. It was to make friends. It was to be with people. But then it became, I'm working like 50 hours a week, and I got 6 classes I got to do, and it's like I don't know how to decompress anymore. I don't know how to relax anymore. So after I got off work at like 9-10 p.m., that's like the first thing I do is I have a drink. This is right before me. And then I met my wife, and stopped drinking as much. And then it was like, all right, now I have to actually deal with my problems. And yeah, it's very, very quickly became too much. But I was like, I'm still not doing enough. I still haven't reached the goalpost, but I'm not doing enough. How does that match? It doesn't make sense. So yeah, I remember my aunt kind of like dragged me to church one day, and I was staying with her at the time, still on the floor, and she was like, "Yeah, just come with me." And I remember going, and like at the end of church, there's like this thing, at least the one I was going to, where at the end they're like, "Hey, if anyone wants to come up to the stage and like kneel and like kind of pray or kind of just let God like almost like just overcome you in a way." And there's always that opportunity at the end of every service, and I was always like, "That's kind of weird." I was like, I don't think I want to take part of that. And I just like seeing people walk, and I was just like, wow, that takes a lot of vulnerability. That takes a lot of courage, but also like I would never do that before. And something about that day, his work was just getting hard. I wasn't like getting recognized for like extra hours I was putting in. I wasn't getting the recognition. Not getting recognition doesn't sting as much as like seeing someone else get recognition who like wasn't working as hard. And it was like, that's going on. I'm starting to get C's in classes and stuff, which I was like, yeah, college made me realize C's get degrees, because I was just like, yeah, I was like, at least I'm passing. But I remember I was so close to failing. I got a 70.1 on a chemistry, like my final, and I like barely passed. And I was like, this is I'm just crumbling. Like, all this anxiety was just overcoming me. And sitting in service, and they offered to like, hey, come up in the service. And I was like, something about it I did, and I bawled my eyes out. And I've only cried maybe like 5 times in like 15 years. And I just remember being at the bottom of that stage and just like crying, because I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. Like struggling growing up with like around that same time period, like suicide ideations, like I had like calling like the suicide hotlines and stuff, like drinking, like just substance abuse, like all these things that define me. And I was like, all right, if I do enough, I'll prove myself. But then on the inside, I was just super worried that if someone knew the real me, if someone knew all this broken, like, parts of me, all these broken parts of me, then they would know that I'm not enough, just like I know that. So got on my knees at like bottom of this church, like they're playing music, and I just remember like uncontrollably like sobbing. And at 17 years old, I realized that like, you're right, I can't handle all this stuff. Like I can't put it all on me. I can't reach that goalpost because I'm setting my standards. I'm making my goals like me-centered. I'm making them about something that I can do. And I realized that, you know, I needed to believe in something bigger than myself. I needed to understand that if my standards are defined by what I can do and by what I can achieve, that I'm never going to meet them. Those goalposts are just still going to keep moving. And that's when I accepted Christ at 17 years old. And the hills have been up and down ever since then. I've been like continually struggling with the same things I struggled with before. But I know now, and I know from that point on, as much as I need to remind myself, or my wife needs to remind me, or my friends need to remind me, I'm unconditionally loved, regardless of what I can. And I would say for everyone listening, like, for me, having something bigger than yourself, spiritual health is a pillar for a reason. Because when I found purpose in things and in like things that I could just achieve, they're sometimes like worthless. And I was like, all right, if I'm just good enough, if I'm good enough, if I work hard enough, if I do all these things, then I will be enough. At the end of the day, I wasn't. I just kept working too hard. And, yeah, joining the military for the Air Force was me looking at, sorry, public speaking is not my strong suit. No eye contact. Okay, so still on the special warfare stuff, I dropped out of the depth with the Navy because I met my wife, and I was like, I think I want to marry this person. So I kind of bailed on the Navy recruiter so I could start spending time with my wife. And then I was working at that point like 2 jobs, and it was, I want to say 90 or 100 hours a week because I didn't have school anymore. And I kind of grew to sort of hate my life, even though I had this person that I loved in my life. And I was like, maybe the military is still an answer. And I thought, well, I want my wife to be taken care of. I want my family to be taken care of once I have a family. And the Air Force seemed like the best option for that. So decided, well, which also, by the way, like from 14 years old, everyone was like, join the Air Force. Like I even remember speaking with like Marines at my college and being like, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. And they were like, don't do it. The only Marines I ever met that told me to join the Marines was a recruiter. And I still thought that was the best answer. I was like, no, that's right. And yeah, I finally listened to everyone else in my life, and I was like, maybe the Air Force is the answer. And I was like, but I can still have that, and then I'll also have the special warfare thing, because I was still trying to prove, even though at this point I accepted Christ, even at this point I had been like, no, he knows that I'm enough. That's all that matters. There was still that part of my soul that was like, no, I need to prove this to myself. You know, I was kind of overweight, and I was like, all right, I'm going to lose all this weight. I'm going to get better at running. I'm going to get better at physical stuff, and I'm going to prove this stuff. And so I went to my first development for the Air Force, trying to get combat controller. And my run time for my 1.5 miles, I want to say, was like 15 minutes and 30 seconds, which the guy leading the group, he was like, yeah, normally when someone's run is slow, we don't invite you back. But you know, maybe we'll let you come back. And I remember in 5 months, I got my run down to 10 minutes and 12 seconds. And that was enough for me to ship out. So I secured my job for special warfare and went to basic training. And that was my first time away from my wife. And I was just like, wow, this is weird. Like, we've been together for a year and a half, 2 years at this point, and being away from her was something I did not like immediately. Not to mention basic training is already like scary. But first time away from her, go through basic training. I'm with a flight of like 120, so there's 40 people per flight, 3 flights of special warfare guys, and they're all like gung ho, like 6'3", 200 pounds, like these ripped people, like 27-year-olds, 30-year-olds, like all these. I'm 19, and I was like, wow, this is a lot. But I remember we were training every day, and I felt pretty good. And then I just remember one night, I woke, I had a dream, and this dream was of me like coming home to like a house with my wife and like with some kids, and like just like walking into the kitchen and like like giving her a kiss and like just hugging my kids and like getting home at like 4 p.m. And I was like, that's not gonna happen if I go for this job that I've been training for like at this point a year and a half. And I realized that what I wanted at this point wasn't to prove someone wrong. It wasn't to prove something to myself. It was to be a good father and a good husband. And when I realized that, I kind of checked out. Like at that point, I really did know that special warfare wasn't for me, which is awkward whenever you're in a flight full of people all trying to go and do this thing. So I had a medical thing going on with my legs, and they were like, all right, we're going to hold you back. And you're going to have to go to the next switch cycle, which is going to be like 4 months from now. You're going to stay in holdover. And I was like, actually, I would like to reclass. And they were like, okay. So we proceeded through that process. Number 7 on my list, because they give you like this book that's like 10 years old, completely outdated. And this book, Power Pro is number 7 on my list. I was like 30 minutes. I made this list. I put Power Pro over electrical because it was a slightly higher ASVAB score. And I had no idea what it was. I just knew like Shepherd, Texas, or Shepherd in Texas was going to be tech school. And I was like, all right, I put structures as my number 1 because my father was almost a contractor. And I already knew how to do all these things. And I was like, all right, this is what I want to do when I get out. At that point, I had like decided that I wanted to, anyways, yeah, structures, number 1. I was like, they're going to give me that. And they did not. They gave me number 7, Power Pro. And I was like, what is going on? Nothing's going the way I want it to go. Like, it was special warfare, and now I just quit that. Huge hit to the ego. And then number 1, I was like, all right, structures, this is the plan. This is going to go the way I want it to. And then that didn't happen. I was like, what's going on? And lo and behold, I love my job. And also, like, I got to be stationed in Japan, which I did not want to happen. And I've slowly just come to find out that my plan is not as good as God's. And yeah, I will leave with saying that if that's not how you're pursuing right now, like looking for that kind of answer, find something bigger than yourself to contribute to. Because purpose and like all these things, if you're looking for it in things that you can like just work through or like earn, then it's not going to satisfy you. The goalposts are going to keep moving. In my very like broken way of saying that. But yeah, I think that sums it up.
All right. Thank you.